welcome to the show. We're very excited today. And I just want to say this about freedom of the press. What a great name for the show. This is the foundation of our freedom. If we can't speak our minds, then our minds can't be free, and we can't be free. Liberty is centered on the freedom of speech, and freedom of the press is in the very center of that. That's why it's the First Amendment. We've been talking about this quite a bit. I've got a great guest on the show today. My producer, Rex Lee, and I are going to talk to. Let's bring Rex onto the show right now. Rex, it's great to have you here today.
Good to be here, Merle. We have a very exciting show. Looking forward to visiting with our guest today.
Well, our guest today is David Richardson. He is the CEO of We Ascend Now. And We Ascend Now has recently launched a decentralized social community called Ascend. And it's built on some very unique things. It's built on the values of truth, transparency, and collaboration. The network's based on personal development and community value, in which people's knowledge, skills, and talents are the community's currency. I love the sound of this. Using data and artificial intelligence to inspire people to learn about themselves, Ascend curates content to help people do their best selves and live their best lives. We're welcoming David Richardson to the show. Great to have you here, David. Thanks for being here today.
So excited to be here. I'm really happy to speak to both of you. Such fantastic people, and looking forward to having this conversation.
David, you know everything. You know the right thing to say here. Anyway, we're going to be talking about the state of social media today. And as we know, we've seen some crazy things lately. We've seen the TikTok hearings in Congress. We've seen Facebook in front of Congress. We've heard all the scandals. But I'm going to start here, guys, because I really want to have a discussion about the state of what's happening. And then I want to talk about how We Ascend Now is changing the game out there. But what we're talking about is addictive, harmful apps and social media platforms. We're talking about brain hijacking and manipulative advertising technologies. And I want to start with Sean Parker. We all saw The Social Dilemma. If you haven't seen it, you got to see it.
Let's see.
It is a must see because it's an eye opener here. And he's the co-founder of Facebook and Meta, called Meta today. But here's what he said in Social Dilemma. He said, Facebook, literally changes your relationship with society, with each other. It probably interferes with productivity in weird ways. God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. The thought process that went into building these applications, Facebook being the first of them, was all about how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible? And that means we need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever. And that's going to get you to contribute more content, and that's going to get you more likes and comments. It's a social validation feedback loop, brain hijacking technology. Exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. The inventors, creators, it's me, it's Mark Zuckerberg, it's Kevin Systmore on Instagram. It's all these people understood this consciously, and we did it anyway. That's a devastating comment. But I just want to is this the state of social media today, David?
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, a lot of these people went to the same class in Stanford where they literally taught these ideas of how to hijack the brainstem, how to actually use the same thing that happens when you take heroin, actually the dopamine hits. They found a way to do it through these apps, and simple things like, the reason we have a vertical scroll is because it's like a slot machine, right? It basically is like this intermittent reward system that you're like, what's going to be next? What's going to be next? Spin the dial. And all these things were built in specifically to addict people, specifically to then have the business model of what we're calling surveillance capitalism, right? So that the more attention they can grab, the more money they can grab, the more data they learn about you, the more they can manipulate you. It's a horrible, vicious cycle that unfortunately they absolutely knew. Chamath also talks about this. a lot of them now won't let their own kids on social media because they know how devastating it is, and are kind of off social media themselves because they understand how devastating it is. And that's even before you get to what Rex has found out about the vulnerabilities in the infrastructure itself. So it's really insane.
Rex, why don't you weigh in on this too? Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to definitely weigh in on this. As you know, I work in the industry. My day job is app and platform development. A company I was associated with off and on for over 30 years in the telecommunications industry and the app and platform development industry was Carnegie Technologies, and the CEO and other folks were the initial investors in Triller. So we know what's baked into these things. So when you're listening to David and I talk, we're talking from an industry professional's perspective, not people looking at it from the outside in. And this is what's baked into these platforms. Again, this is taught at Stanford. Merle, you and I have covered this on other shows that we spoke about regarding addictive technology. And it's not just addictive technology. What we're not hearing from industry experts like Sean Parker and some of what you were speaking about, the slot machine aspects of the technology that was also exposed by Tristan Harris, a former lead product designer for Google. And he talked about intermittent variable rewards as a means to maximize addictiveness. And that just simply means, as you scroll down, you start to see topics and subjects that you're interested in that you'll want to comment on. Additionally, what they do is they tie notifications onto this. So when you do try and take a break from the platform's constantly reaching out to you with notifications from people who either like or dislike what you had to say. And that reels you back in. Some of the algorithms are actually intentionally developed literally to be divisive.
Yes.
Meaning that they 100%. Want to divide you, because if everybody's agreeing with what you're saying, that gets a little bit boring, but they want to reel you back in with and pitch you against other people to keep that addictiveness at a high rate. One of the comments from Sean Parker was, God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains.
Right.
I say God only knows what it's doing to everybody's brains.
Well,
everybody's being harmed by this.
What it's doing to the planet, because, like to pile on Rex, I mean, so if you think about it, yes, these algorithms have been trained now that this sort of vitriol actually is the thing that keeps you most engaged, right? And it's the thing that pumps you up the most. So what they do then is figure out what actually gets you riled up and sends you more of that, right? So it divides us. It actually pushes misinformation far more than it pushes actual truth. It's like, I think 9 times more it pushes misinformation because of this, because the misinformation riles people up. And then what happens is Facebook actually found in their own research, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, that 66% of people who were joining hate groups were joining because of Facebook. Facebook's like, you like this? You'll love the Nazis, right?
Exactly.
And they knew it, and they did nothing about it. So then you get things like what happened in Myanmar, right, where you've got now ethnic cleansing that's being orchestrated on Facebook, and all these things that are happening. I mean, the world is more divided than ever. We're seeing more and more extreme sides, not just in America. We're seeing that everywhere. We're seeing that in the Philippines. We're seeing that in Brazil. We're seeing that. And so it's this global phenomenon. And if you saw The Great Hack, you see that underneath all of it is this ability to manipulate people's minds and drive people further away politically. So I mean, the extent to the damage, it's impossible to even calculate how bad it is right now.
David, real quickly, Mer, I wanted to chime in because it's highly relevant to what David was saying. Initially, as Sean Parker stated, I don't think they understood it as they started to release this technology. I think initially, if you go back to who did this first, it was actually Apple. It started with the first connected iPod. When you connected that iPod up to the internet, Apple was able to see the choices you were making in music to sell you more music, which is okay based on your preferences. But when that operating system from the iPod proliferated to a cell phone, which is basically a computer, it's not just a cell phone. A smartphone is a computer and a phone. It's an integrated computer and a phone. They then were able to get even more data about your likes. And this is where it ties into surveillance capitalism. This is what surveillance capitalism is it's understanding what you like based on your personal preferences so that they can send you targeted ads. So again, I think if you go to step 2 and how we got here, step 2 was, all right, how do I sell more hamburgers and tennis shoes to people and concert tickets and everything, which is still okay to some extent. But then it escalated further. And when you get to the great hack, what David is referring to is the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal, of which I was a government advisor for Senator Blumenthal. I was a congressional advisor to Senator Blumenthal's office regarding the Facebook Cambridge Analytica hearings with Mark Zuckerberg. I'm an advisor to various lawmakers for congressional hearings centered on big tech, because I provide questions to them to ask these guys, because they don't understand how all this works. But what that was based on is then it elevated to a level that this is where it gets really scary for folks and highly concerning, is now they're manipulating you based on your personal preferences. They're exploiting you by selling that to advertisers who are preying upon your personal preferences to sell you retail goods and services, consumer goods and services. And now it's in the political arena, which it then becomes highly dangerous, because now they're taking your personal preferences. And this was the premise of the great hack or Facebook Cambridge Analytica. Alexis Kogan, the original app developer, was a data broker. He had nothing to do with Cambridge Analytica or Facebook. He just developed an app that collected information and he launched it into the Facebook ecosystem. He probably collected information on over 300 million people, 80 million of which were American voters. And then there were targeted ads based on those 80 million voters' personal preferences to actually tip the scales into Donald Trump's favor in certain counties and districts where they were literally looking to just move the needle about 4 or 5%. So what's the harm in this? Well, we've all seen the movie, the Manchurian Candidate. They brainwash a candidate, get him into power. You can leverage them for gain or power or whatever. Well, this is the Manchurian Candidate in the opposite. Now it's the Manchurian voter. Why, if you can brainwash the candidate, why can't you brainwash the voting populace? Hence, brain hijacking technology, which is a true industry term. You know, again, I tell people the first time I heard it, I thought it was a science fiction movie, and brain hijacking was a real thing. I was like, oh my God. And it's baked into the platforms through manipulative advertising technologies, which is the course that you would take at Stanford to go work in Silicon Valley. But I just wanted to add that it's gone into this realm. And then one other thing that you touched base on that I've done a lot of research on was the Myanmar genocide. Now you go from politics to government using this information to identify their political foes, and they actually launched genocide. Now, there's a little known fact about Myanmar that people don't understand. In America, we have the choice to get on Facebook or not.
Right.
The people who bought smartphones in Myanmar didn't have that choice. The carrier who sold the phones to them made them activate a Facebook account to activate their cellular phone service. So they were forced to activate a Facebook account first before they could even activate their cellular phone, which gave the government the opportunity to surveil the populace, and then the rest is history. I mean, literally, Meta co-founder Mark Zuckerberg and his executive team that were behind this literally had the blood of those people who've been murdered on their hands. This is where we're at today. So it's not just addictive technology, but it's how it's been used by government, including our own government.
To your point, though, Rex and David, doesn't it seem like these things, as we listen to Tristan Harris and Sean Parker speak, that this was the idea all along, that these tyrannical governments and surveillance go together hand in hand. And as I hear these people talking, whether they knew it or not, this seemed like a setup all along for the government to be able to use this. This is bait for governments. What do you think about that, David?
I mean, I think a lot of the stuff, if you look back, is DARPA funded. I think, yes, I think there are probably agreements being made to allow backdoors, to allow these types of things in. that we need more transparency about. It's hard to understand how that's not the case. I would argue that probably Google is part of that as well. So I think there are things in terms of surveillance that we need to be very careful about, because human nature is such that if we allow this type of power to have this amount of information, it's going to be abused, unfortunately.
Well, you know, this is very much reminiscent of, you go to an amusement park and you see all these prizes, and
Hmm.
your family, your girlfriend, your wife, your kids, they want that prize so
Right.
badly. And oh, well, it's easy, it's fun, and that whole dopamine
Yep.
hit, the psychology of using your vulnerabilities
Yep.
against you. This is that,
Yeah,
isn't it?
this is exactly that. I mean, so a lot of what I think about is, I've been thinking about this for a while. If you think about, go back to cars, the first cars were incredibly effective, and social media by itself is a great idea. The idea that we can connect all around the world, that we can touch each other, learn from each other, share from each other. That's a great idea. It's just been unfortunately exploited by this data model and this sort of revenue model of surveillance capitalism. But the first cars were also, they got you from point A to B. They were great, but like lots of people died. They were really, 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 really dangerous. And then we added things in for safety. We added in airbags. We added in air brakes. We added in safety glass. We added in seatbelts. And the same thing needs to happen with social media, where it's not that social media itself is a bad thing. I mean, the fact that I can connect with people who I went to kindergarten with and see what their kids are doing now is amazing. I just don't want to be data mined for it. I don't want to be exploited. I don't want to be manipulated. So how do we do that and have the good things that social media brings us without all the dangers?
Well, how are you doing this with We Ascend now? What's the difference that because you're a change maker. That's been your whole career.
Yes.
How are you doing it here?
I mean, at the end of the day, you go back to first principles and rearrange and redesign everything from its outset. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be that way. If you go back to the car metaphor, you can actually redesign social media such that it allows us to have the connections without the dangers. So we've put things in place. So think about the infinite scroll I just said, that was specifically done to create this intermittent feeling of success and reward, which then makes you addicted. Well, what if we instead go this way, like a book? So that's intentional. Every single thing was intentionally done. We intentionally have, to stop misinformation, a random group of 30 people look at every piece of content that's uploaded and give it a rating from 5, this is incredibly helpful, to -1, we're not sure this is even true, or it's salacious or something that shouldn't be here. And it's not any one person, it's a random group of people, and it shifts all the time. And then it's an average. So at the end of the day, if your content, it gets below 2, which is the minimum threshold to get onto the platform, you get some comments back that says, okay, here's things you may want to change to actually shift it and get it to, so that the community feels like this is a good idea. So it helps you. The same thing with comments. So instead of having encouraging vitriolic comments and hateful comments, which unfortunately these other platforms do, all comments are rated as well from -1 to 5. So it's like, are you sure you wanted to post that? Like, it's like, did you really mean it that way? We can disagree, but let's disagree in constructive ways. I've had, like I told you earlier, I've had constructive disagreements with people who said to me, I don't understand why American slavery is so much different and why you guys can't just get over it. Like, I've had a constructive conversation with someone who said that to me, and it's possible to have these conversations.
It is,
as long as you're
it's
able
called reason.
as long as you're able to stay in the civil discourse and not start flinging things at each other. And that's what Ascend is built for.
And that's the difference, right? Because in these other social media platforms, they're actually trying to get into that
100%.
base mentality
100%.
of reflex and emotion, and just like you said, Rex, they just drag you in that way, and then they can manipulate you. And get this, Rex, this is something that Tristan Harris said, is that using these manipulative tactics, that it's working. And he says that slot machines make more money in the United States than baseball, movies, and theme parks combined.
Wow. Look, if
so it is working, right?
Mm-hmm.
but there are consequences
Yeah.
for that baked into the platform. And you know, again, I go back to Sean Parker publicly admitting, saying, God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. What if we had a cigarette executive pre the big tobacco congressional hearings and lawsuits and everything? What if one had gotten on a radio talk show and said, God only knows what this is doing to our customers' brains? See, people think that people look at social media and tech differently than they do other consumer products.
Yeah, they really
You know,
do.
the fact is,
Good point.
Facebook, Google, ByteDance with TikTok and so forth, all these companies, Microsoft, they build and develop consumer products and services. That's what they do. That's their job. These are consumer products. So, you know, we've gotten beaten down so much by big tech, we don't even look at ourselves as the customer.
Right.
So when he says God only knows what it's doing to our children's brain, what he's really saying is God only knows what it's doing to our customers' brains. We're the people making them billions of dollars. And the fallout is real. Since 2011, when social media proliferated from desktop computers to mobile devices, there's been a double-digit rise in depression, anxiety, self-harm, and suicide. And this was noted in a document. Again, I was a government advisor for the Facebook, Instagram whistleblower hearings with Frances Haugen. I was an advisor to Senator Blackburn's office. Frances Haugen, again, she was a product designer for Meta. She submitted a document, an internal document that showed a 13% harm rate with Facebook now and Instagram. So now let's look at it this way. Let's just say you, David, Merle, and myself, we have a car seat manufacturing company, and we manufacture car seats for children and infants, right? So let's say we sell 10 million of these car seats. Sales are off the chart. Everybody loves our car seats. 3 months later, reports come in that 3 kids were tragically injured and 1 kid was killed while using our products and services. The FTC would immediately step in and tell us to recall all 10 million of our car seats. So what I don't understand is, here's where government is failing to enforce consumer protection laws. I'm not talking about Section 230. This has nothing to do with posting content and holding the platforms liable for the content that they're posting. That's what Section 232 gives them protection on. It doesn't give them protection on hurting or killing their customers. You take a 13% harm rate, and if the numbers are true and Facebook truly has 2 billion subscribers, and you divide that in there, they're harming and killing millions of people on their platform. So where's the FTC going, this is a consumer product and people are being killed? There's reports of children dying almost every other month as a result of TikTok challenges. Where's the FTC in holding them liable for a harmful and addictive consumer product? We're not seeing that same enforcement here, which is why we need solutions such as what David is providing, David's company, We Ascend. Now, safe alternative. I'm not saying get rid of social media. I'm not even saying get rid of surveillance and data mining business practices. There has to be a code of ethics that go with this, which, you know, something like with surveillance and data mining, that they actually allow you to choose to participate or not, and allow you full control over your data to delete it or not. Plus, I believe they shouldn't be able to surveil or data mine anybody under the age of 18 at all.
Agreed.
And that you'd have to be an adult to make those decisions, not a 13-year-old, which is what happened in 2013 of all things, when big tech went to Congress with their lobbyists. They actually lobbied Congress to allow 13 to 17-year-olds to accept a contract, a legal binding contract, which are the predatory terms of service that support all these products. We need change, and David, you're providing that change.
Thank you.
Where's the compassion? That's what I want to say. I mean, when you think about these leaders, you know, we've heard from Tristan Harris from Google. We've heard from Sean Parker as well. These are the people that put this together, and it seems like they're really attacking our youth and the vulnerabilities that are there to secure a future of people that they can control. There's no compassion there. But at We Ascend Now, that the whole foundation of your company is rooted in this
Yes.
compassion. That's your mission, to build people up, not
Yes.
rip them down. Tell us more about that.
Absolutely. I think, to not say something too controversial, I mean, the founders of these other companies share a similar background, right? They're all, kind of the typical college dropouts, social network type, who, then started this company at a very young age. A lot of the inception of these companies, Facebook was originally kind of like a hot or not site. We all watched the movie. YouTube, I think, got its prominence around the sort of nip slip in the Super Bowl. Instagram was originally a bourbon site that they discovered people liked the pictures. So a lot of these things, kind of their inception was really tech. It wasn't really about what the mission was, no matter what they said. And so how do these next gen? So the tech isn't hard anymore, right? So it's no one has to figure out the tech. How do we really think about the communities we're creating? How do we come up with a more compassionate, think about the world that we're creating with these connections? So my background, I come from a sort of multiple background of both sort of marketing, tech, that world, but also I've spent the last 28 years of my life in a school for mindfulness that I'm actually the president of now. And so those two things come together. And how do we create a more mindful system, a system that still like allows us to do all the things that tech allows us to do, but really designed almost in a planned community kind of way, right? Imagine the kind of community we'd want to live in that allows us to do all these things, but do all these things in a way that inspires us and elevates us. That's the name Ascend, versus racing to the brainstem. Our brain is sort of a three-tiered system, right? And the brainstem is the most primitive part, the reptilian part, and that's the part they're trying to jack, right?
Yes,
then
they
you've got
are.
the sort of
Yep.
mammalian system in there, which is more your feelings and emotions, and then you have your higher thinking, your cerebral cortex. How do we sort of really move up here, and actually sort of start to inspire the heart, touch the things that actually bring us together.
Well, how do you do that? That is, I mean, because what you're saying is beautiful, but the higher level thinking doesn't. It's not a reflex, right? Like this, they're going at these social media companies are going after your instant knee jerk reaction. But what you're saying takes a little more work, right?
Well, I would say that in the same way that their algorithms encourage going to the brainstem. It's like if you're trying to be famous and trying to get more likes, what the list of things they tell you to do basically are stuff that like race to the bottom of the brainstem, right? It's like show a little,
Right,
it's like 10 things to do to like go viral, or all like hit the brainstem. Whereas our whole principle of Ascend is create the most valuable content you can create in whatever topic it is, whether it's woodworking, whether it's singing, whether it's dancing. And then the community, like I said, there's a community review. They rate it like for how helpful it was, how valuable it was to them. And then so if you get a 5 rating for this is really valuable to me, I was really touched, I was really inspired, and it's not just any one person, but 30 random people say that, then the next person who's looking for woodworking content or ballet content, it's the first thing they see. So you're not trying to race to the bottom of the brainstem to try to go viral. The way to go viral is create as much value as you possibly can. And then the community says that's very valuable. And then it intentionally goes out to the rest of the system because it's something the community has said is valuable. So it's the opposite.
Real quickly, I want to chime in here because you said something that is interesting, because another thing what people don't realize is that there's 2 versions of TikTok. And if those of you don't know this, it's developed by a company from China called ByteDance. Even though they say their headquarters are here in the United States, they're still beholden to the Chinese government and the CCP. Now, when their CEO, Shou Chen, I believe, was in front of Congress a few weeks ago, and this was news reports before then, but it really came out during the congressional hearings that there were 2 algorithms for TikTok. A good algorithm and a bad algorithm. The bad algorithm is pointed to the West. Why? Because they're our adversary. And this is where you get your TikTok challenges. You actually get over-sexualization of children who are dancing around on there, and they're encouraged to do all these really horrible things.
Yep.
And I don't know where parents' brains are allowing their kids on there, putting themselves out there. Because in the 90s, when the internet first got going, we were told, don't put anything about your family out there. Don't show your children on the internet because of predators. And now here we are, the opposite. Well, that's the TikTok algorithm in the United States, and that's the same algorithm that's used by all the other platforms out there. Not all of them, but most of the ones that we know about, like Instagram and Facebook and so forth. So what we also learned is that you can program the algorithm to do good. The TikTok algorithm in China promotes academics, achievement, sports, arts. It also is designed to actually tell the end user to turn it off after about 45 minutes to an hour. So the Chinese government is smart enough to know, and it validates what David's saying. In our country, we're not going to allow that pipe of garbage that you're feeding to the West. We're going to allow social media, but responsible social media in our country, to promote good things and to also encourage and motivate kids to do the right thing in terms of academics, to ascend. That's what they're trying them to do by learning what good art is, and academics and athletic achievements and so forth. So it's funny, what you're trying to promote here is exactly what ByteDance and the Chinese government is promoting in regards to social media to their own population.
So exactly. So yeah, I'm going to jump on. I mean, it's like, people know that the system you put in place creates the environment. The environment you put in place creates the expectations. The expectations you put in place create behavior. That's all. People, we know that. If you study behavioral science, we know that for a fact. You can take two twins, put them in two different environments, one in a high achieving school and one in a low achieving school, and that, the one in the high achieving school, just because the expectations are higher, is gonna do better in life. They could have the exact same IQ, they could have exact same everything else, but we understand that the environment you put someone in actually impacts how they express themselves.
So Merle, real quickly, this goes back to our last guest, Gary David, who is a sociology professor at Bentley. And this ties into the happiness machine.
It sure does.
It really does. We had a fascinating discussion about this, and this has been, long before Stanford, there was advertising.
Yes, of course.
that was your addictive advertising. All you have to do, is go back and see how they advertise cigarettes and how they promoted actually how to kill yourself with cancer, and made it look like a wonderful thing.
So, freedom. They made it look like it was freedom.
Torches of freedom.
That's what it was. Exactly.
Freedom of the press. Don't throw us in there.
Now, this is the interesting thing, is that what has happened here is that our definition of freedom before that was based and rooted in what's in the Declaration of Independence, is that we've been given these liberties that from above, not by any government, 100%. But from God, 100%. And that these are unalienable. They can't be taken away. But what happened through this media type of manipulation that we're talking about, and we're going back 100 years on this, to Ed Bernays and his, the father of public relations, is that this didn't even start out as advertising. It started out as propaganda. Which actually spun into advertising. That's why I brought up that these things seem to have been created for the purpose of controlling our society, not so much, and a fruit of that is advertising. It's not the other way around. Unfortunately, that's what we're seeing here, and that we've been manipulated into believing that freedom is something other than government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It is satisfying your base desires, not your needs.
Correct.
Causing you to become a product consuming machine that actually supports the society, this government through revenue from mass produced products, but also keeps you docilized, sort of like that dopamine hit that we talked about. Oh, I feel good that I have all these things, but you're not worried about really how things are happening in your society. You're only concerned with yourself. And that's what these algorithms seem to be doing, is pushing you into this century of self.
I was going to say, you've seen the documentary Century of the Self.
Documentary was, exactly.
Yeah, I love that documentary. It's one of my favorite documentaries. It's mind-blowing. Absolutely. Everyone should see that if you haven't seen it. So how do we, at the end of the day, so now we're really getting to the deeper conversation, right? Is that when I talk about mindfulness, what I'm really talking about is the fact that we're all conditioned. We're all conditioned. From the moment we arrive on this planet, we're conditioned by our environment. We're conditioned, unfortunately, by our parents, by our schools, by our media, by everything around us. And for most of us, unfortunately, it makes us kind of sleepy. It makes us kind of just accept the way things are in a sort of Truman Show-esque world. So at its deepest level, if you're going to talk about Ascend, how does Ascend help people to kind of wake up? How does it give people the power not to just fit themselves into the box of a school, the box of a job, the box of what's available, but how does it let anyone with a cell phone and something to communicate, whether it's, a talent or a skill or an expertise, put it out there from their heart, and then the people in the world who love that thing will naturally find it and connect with it, and then you can start to make a living doing the thing that you're put on the earth to do, and that actually will inherently help you evolve, help the world evolve, and it becomes almost like potluck exchange of the best ideas and the greatest talents in the world.
Just made my mouth water. This whole notion that everyone is a creator, that they're coming in to actually share content.
Yes.
I never felt like that on other social media platforms.
You're
I felt like that. Yes, exactly. Talk more about that difference, because I think that's a key cornerstone.
It's a key cornerstone. So the idea that everybody has something that makes their soul sing. Everybody does. There's not one person on this planet who doesn't have something that makes their soul sing and is really their true purpose. And I firmly believe that. It takes a while to strip back the conditioning of, the things you think you're supposed to do and get to what's inside that person's soul, but everybody's got it. And when you actually touch that and inspire that and actually start to share that, it's a powerful thing. And Ascend's whole purpose is to let people start to do that more, get better at it, and then share it with the world. And then hopefully at some point, the vision is that you can actually make a living at that thing rather than have to force yourself into something that society says you're supposed to do. And I think the world would be a better place if everybody can do that.
I think it's guaranteed it would be. I met somebody once a long time ago who said, I asked him what he did for a living. He told me he didn't work, but he obviously did. He had a great house. He had all these awards in his office and everything. And I said, I challenged him, and he told me that when you love what you do, it's not work any longer. And that's sort of a paradise on earth, right? And you have put together a platform that facilitates that type of thing. Instead of appealing to your base desire, your platform has a formula to work to appeal to your heart's dreams that are elevated way above those base desires.
That's exactly
to do good.
That's exactly it. Your highest version of yourself, and that's really the goal, and to inspire people to reach the highest version of themselves.
Go ahead, Rex.
So this is great, and God bless you for providing this this platform out there. And I really suggest anybody, especially parents, if you have children and they're on social media, consider looking at We Ascend now and go and look at the Ascend social media platform. But at the end of the day, we all can wonder and dream about great consumer goods and products. But for the company to stay in business, how does the company make money? And I just wanted to ask you, how what's the business model, and how do people monetize on Ascend without having to do it through predatory surveillance and data mining business practices, addictive technology, and so forth? What are you all doing that's different than Meta, Facebook, and Instagram and TikTok and so forth?
Great question. So there's a couple things. So first, there's imagine, like I said, it's a potluck and everybody brings their best dish, right? And so as long as you're bringing something to the potluck, then everything is free because you're able to share all the learning and talent content because you're contributing yourself. There's another version that is just, sharing with your friends, like normal Facebook, that's free all the time. But if, say, you want to participate in this sort of learning and talent piece, but say you don't want to, you want to be a consumer, you don't actually want to share your own content, which is okay. Then there's a little subscription model. Everybody gets some credits in the beginning, but at the end of the day, if you're not contributing your own content to get more credits, you'll run out of those credits. And so there's $3.99 a month just to get access to the best content all over the world. So similar to a subscription model. That's one. You don't have to do it. You can still do the free stuff with your friends if you want, but if you want to get the sort of higher level learning and talent stuff, it'll be $3.99 if you don't want to share your own content. Two, we allow, so I've worked with influencers a lot and sort of what influencers should be versus what they are, right? And the idea that once you sort of establish say you're teaching woodworking, it's an example because I'd like to use that example, and you're showing how to make a bench, and people love your woodworking content, but eventually you're like, okay, I'm going to give you more detailed instructions. I'm going to have a private class over here. Rather than having to do a Patreon or rather than having to do something separate, you actually can have a private group on Ascend and say, we're going to work together over the next 10 weeks, and I'm going to show you step by step how to make this bench. And it's only $5.99 a month. And that goes to the creator. We take 10%, right? But so we enable the creators to actually, like I said, make money on the platform. And we take a little bit just because we're providing the platform. Also, if anyone at any time can say, I want to donate to this person because I love their content. I either want to give them $10 because I love this piece of content I just saw, or I'm so inspired by this person, like Patreon again, I want to give them $100 a month because I just love this dancer. I want to become a patron of this person. And because we're creating this platform, we take 10% of that. And then finally, there's and it's as we evolve, we're upending the advertising model. So say
That's right.
yeah. Say Home Depot, for instance, wants to share something about their hammers, and so they go back to this woodworking influencer who's creating great content, and they can actually look on Ascend and say, who are the content creators who have the highest value of content in the sort of woodworking category. And we see this woodworking person, he has a 4.5 in his expertise score because all of his content over time gets high scores. And they go to him and say, okay, we'd love to work with you. And can you create content using our hammer and sponsored by Home Depot? He says, fine. They can negotiate what that cost is. And then when he creates that content, if that content gets a high score, a value score as rated by the community, it's actually a much cheaper, we call CPM, cost per thousand. So $8 CPM if it's rated at a 5. If it's rated very low, if Home Depot's like, just throw our hammer in there and tell people buy the hammer, and it's low value, people don't feel like it's teaching them something, and it gets a 2.
Yeah.
The CPM is actually double. So it's $16 per thousand.
So there's a built-in incentive to raise it up a level.
Everything in the system is about encouraging high value, things that actually inspire you to be better, not things that are just trash and put out there just for the sake of garbage.
So what this reminds me of, and maybe it would be a great platform for investors. So if somebody has a good product out there, maybe it's almost like a Shark Tank.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
And an investor VC could possibly go on there and see people who are creating things, that maybe could drive revenue in the terms of consumer products or even arts or music and so forth. I know you all push arts and entertainment and music. Explain a little bit about that as well.
Well, I mean, it's the idea that, so you've got 2 tracks. You've got arts and entertainment, which is for if you just want to enjoy. So I imagine this eventually will turn into its own sort of Netflix with all types of, it could be the greatest ballet performers, the greatest opera singers, short films, all that stuff. It's the stuff if you just want to say, I want to watch cool stuff, jazz, musicians. And then you've got the learning side, which is like, I'm teaching you something, I'm showing you, I'm sharing something that you're going to learn from. And both of those tracks are basically rated by how helpful things are or how entertaining that thing was. And we're creating, like I said, we're creating a society that's all about providing value, using the thing that is coming from your heart and the thing that you have best to share with this greater community. And the people who love that thing will then find you and contribute, hopefully, back to you, either in terms of their own content or in terms of compensating you financially because they're inspired by what you have to share.
David, there is such a good message in what you're doing right here. Now, I gotta ask you this. You're the head of the School for Mindfulness. Is that right? Do I have that right?
It's called the Institute for Hermetic Philosophy, but it's a school all about self-awareness, mindfulness, being more conscious in your daily life.
And this is injected into the middle of your mission, correct?
I would say that,
they go hand in hand.
I would say that there isn't like any kind of specific, like I said, it's anything can be woodworking, anything. So it's not like a spiritual thing per se. It's more of a principle, right? The principle of equivalence, the principle of equilibrium. We actually eventually will have our own coin that can be shared across the platform called Equilibrium. Because the idea, even if you think about the word compensation, what does that mean? It means that someone has provided value and you're providing compensation. So the balance always stays the same, right? And so they're just equal value exchange. So when you provide a piece of content, someone else provides a piece of content, there's a currency that moves forward. The currency means flow, right? So these things we've lost track of. Like we can really get into like the central bank and all that stuff of why, our system is kind of screwed up. But the idea is there shouldn't be this like authority that is like handing out money to the next level of the pyramid, handing out money to the next level of the pyramid, handing out money to the next level of the pyramid. There's this central community that there's this currency and exchange happening, but as a circle, not as a pyramid, right? And that's really what's happening in the sort of, I would say the compensation system that lies within Ascend.
It's beautiful. I love the concept. Now I have two questions for you to because our show is called Freedom of the Press. From your point of view, from We Ascend Now's point of view, what's the philosophy on freedom of speech and freedom of the press? From the CEO.
I believe 100% in freedom of speech and freedom of the press. I also believe you're not free from consequences. That's the big difference between me and someone like Elon Musk. I think when people talk about free speech-ism, a lot of times they want the freedom to say whatever they want, and often they tend to be people in the majority who aren't as affected by these types of things that people in the LGBT community or people of color may have to deal with when you just unleash freedom of speech full on, right? So I think you need to have freedom of speech, but not freedom from consequences. So anyone on the Ascend platform can say whatever they want, but like I said, you're rated by your fellow community of how valuable that comment or that content is. And again, it doesn't have to be. You don't have to agree. Right. I said I can reasonably agree with someone who doesn't understand why Black people are on welfare. I can reasonably agree and have a reasonable argument with that. But if it turns into vitriol, then that becomes less valuable and that will be voted down and will eventually show that you're kind of not a person who's here to contribute to the community. You're just here to be kind of cancerous in the community, and you may not continue in the community unless you're someone who's going to be a value creator. We don't have to agree. No, we don't have to agree at all.
It makes total sense to me. I mean, we have this ability to make our choices. Like I go to the store, I'm going to pick out the food that I want, and there are consequences to the choices that I make. I could be just going on a high carb, high sugar diet, and there's going to be consequences there. I've lived them. And then you can go the other way around as well. And I've lived that as well. So I get what you're saying, and it makes such logical sense. I mean, everything that you've said today, David, it's just very sound, very logical. It's like standing on the rock. But question for you: these civil liberties that seem to be demonized today, that they're not being held up as a pinnacle of our society. How does Ascend work with our own civil liberties? Is there a conflict? It seems like there's a conflict on every other social media platform.
So give me an example because I want to make sure exactly what you're saying. Civil liberties such as, so I don't want to just get, be
It seems to be that wherever we have liberties today, even let's say, for instance, even just freedom to travel, go visit your Okay, here's a great one. Over COVID, I couldn't go visit my grandmother without being demonized. I mean, well, I could on Christmas. Okay, so that's a pretty big deal right there. And that was a liberty I thought we had. I thought family was a big deal here in our society.
So look, Ascend is all about freedom. I mean, the whole even the logo of the ascending staircase is all about people becoming more free, more liberated. I believe that the free exchange of ideas, as long as they're within bounds, right, is liberating. So, there may be people who think it's dangerous to visit your family. There may be people thinking like, but I want to visit my family. You should be able to have that conversation in a respectful way. You should be able to make your choice. And the person who, feels like that's dangerous should be able to make their choice. And that's all fine, right? I think we need to allow for people to express themselves and to be who they are without imposing our feelings and our views on others. And that's the society that Ascend, online is looking to create, and a society where people are able to freely exchange ideas, freely disagree, as long as you can disagree in unvalue creation way too, but we're encouraging value creation by our very system that we've built. And then, hopefully, we get into a place where, with this open of exchange of ideas, where people are adding value creation thoughts versus, detracting thoughts, it doesn't turn into, screw you, you're like the Antichrist. No, screw you, you're taking away my liberty. It's like, but that's what it's become now because of social media, where we can't even have a conversation versus, well, I mean, because I'll say I did travel during COVID and I felt fine doing it. Some of my family members did not. And we were able to have a valuable conversation about that. And, I was able to respect their views. They respect my views to a certain extent. And we moved on. I think we need to be able to do that as a society.
I think so too. And I really think that what we're missing here is this art of reason. And just like you're talking about, you've developed a platform where people can engage in this timeless tradition here in America of sitting down and reasoning with somebody that doesn't necessarily share the same views. And we do this in a civil discourse without impugning somebody's character. It's a beautiful thing. Go ahead, Rex. I wanted to get your feedback too, Rex, as an app developer and a journalist in the tech sector. Have you seen anything like this before, Rex?
No, I haven't. And, one of the things that I really like is, the encouragement of the community, not only to rate the content providers, but also rate the comments, and that's holding people accountable for what they're saying. It's okay. The ACLU actually represented the Nazi party in the 70s so that they could march in Illinois,
which was the right thing to do.
And people criticize them for that. But what's great? It brings the idiots out into the public view so the public can then make their own judgment and see how destructive these individuals are and what idiots they are.
That's what freedom of speech and freedom of press is all about.
Exactly. And I myself have, Merle, my situation on LinkedIn. I exposed a cybersecurity threat associated with the repatriation form that was up on the State Department's website for people in Afghanistan when they were leaving, and suddenly I was erased from Facebook. I mean, erased from LinkedIn for a while, for about 3 weeks, till they realized I was a journalist. But I found a cybersecurity flaw in that, and I was censored there. I've also been censored on Twitter just for the articles that I've written for the Epic Times about technology. Nothing political. It was just exposing some of what we're talking about today, because I'm one of the few technologists that can look at what we're doing and say this is wrong. Even though I'm in that industry, I can still look at either the company I work for or other companies that are developing these apps and platforms and state that this is wrong. And I've been censored for that. But I love that about your platform. And I don't think you're looking to root your platform into these political discussions or anything. It's more about arts, more about academics. It's actually promoting what is good, and I think we need more of that today, not the negative stuff.
We're okay with political conversation. We're okay with any conversation. The whole point is to have that conversation in a way that you can share your views, someone else can share the opposite views, and that's okay, right? And you can have a conversation about it versus just bashing each other's heads apart, right?
I mean, this sounds like the complete spirit of America here. I feel like this is really what the center of what things are supposed to be like, David.
100%. I believe firmly in the American experiment. I so believe in the American experiment. I think we have to be realistic that America at its inception was a dichotomy, right? The same person who wrote, all men are created equal, held slaves, so it's I think we have to understand that dichotomy, and that dichotomy still exists today between the vision of what we want to be and sort of the, another group of folks who, are maybe scared of that or not familiar with that or unsure about if that's a good thing. And that's okay. And we need to have that conversation because this is an experiment. This country is the most amazing country that's ever existed because we're trying. I mean, where else are you going to find this kind of pluralistic society where people are trying to figure it out? And we're not perfect, but we're trying to figure it out. And that's a great thing.
I think so. Here,
David. Go ahead. I want to comment on what you said. There was a dichotomy between our founding fathers and the Constitution that they wrote, but what lasted? What lasted? The wisdom of the Constitution.
100%.
That's what lasted.
We're still struggling with social gratification and racial stuff. It's it's still there.
It's an institution that goes back to the beginning of man, and they wrote these things that were completely countercultural when they wrote 100%. This. The norm was slavery for the entire world, but those words that were written were words that, like water that drips on a rock, eventually erodes that rock. Absolutely. And even Thomas Jefferson, the writer of the Declaration of Independence, said he was instrumental in putting programs together. The Northwestern Territory, when they put that together, the first thing they did was outlaw slavery there. These people set a precedent and put a ginormous change in place that took time to change. But 100%. As we see, this battleship, this aircraft carrier has been turning, and it's been going in the right way. Now, over the last few years, it seems to have stalled a bit, but it does seem like we've done great things. I mean, as a Black person in America myself, I can say that up until the last couple of years, it seemed like relationships and race have been at an all-time high. But it does seem like the social media aspect of it has really been at the center of bringing that back into a different direction. And really, David, we look to people like you here in America to help us to fix that problem. David, tell us more about how we can, how the audience can find out more about your platform, more about you, and how they can get on the platform itself.
Sure. I encourage everyone to go to www.weascendnow.com. That's www.weascendnow.com. And you can find more about our mission, our values. You can actually download the app. You can try it yourself. I encourage everyone just to give it a shot. Try, see if you like it, share it with people. Like anything, it's about the network effect. So the more people are on it, the more valuable it is, and for everyone who's on it. So share it, and you can make it what you want it to be. We're also very open to comments. So if you wanted to say there's something, a feature you'd love or something else you'd love for it to do, you understand now after hearing us what the vision is and what we want to create. And we're open to feedback. So please share with us at www.weascendnow.com.
Thank you, David. Boy, this has been a really stimulating conversation, and we definitely want to have you back on the show again, David. But we're going to wrap up the show right now. Thank you for joining Freedom of the Press here on CyberTalk TV. For Rex Lee and David Richardson, I'm Merle Garrison. We'll see you next time.